2007. The Big Bang Theory first aired on CBS. Steve Jobs unveiled the first iPhone, and the R35 Nissan GT-R was launched, giving me my first cover story. There's no getting away from it. The GT-R is now an old car. The question is it still relevant? Or is it just like a old meal that you've reheated and sprinkled some more salt and pepper on? This latest iteration of the R35 is the second model in its lifetime to wear the Nismo badge, meaning it is the most hardcore, most track-focused and most expensive GT-R that you can buy. Coming in at around £180,000 or $212,000. As soon as you get in here, despite this being new, there are all sorts of familiar things, obviously, from the quirky, shall we say, which is things like the gear lever. It always takes just a little while before you're allowed to actually put it into drive after you've started up. The startup itself, that sort of dry cough that you get from the car. Then things that I don't think have really been bettered, like the instrument binnacle, which looks lovely with all the analog dials, but also moves with the steering wheel as you adjust it for reach and rake. The people behind the Nismo say that the developments are the result of Kaizen, the need to constantly evolve and fine-tune. But after 12 years, they must surely be doing the finest of fine-tuning. The VR38DE TT V6 engine still puts out 592 brake horsepower and 481 pounds-foot of torque, but it now has the turbos from the GT3 race car, with 24% less inertia, and this is claimed to give a 20% improvement in response. The question is, can you feel it from behind the wheel? Well, GT-R is still phenomenally quick. To me, it feels like the engine, more than ever, thrives on revs. Really, you have to stay on top of the gears, make sure that you've got it in its sweet spot to get the most out of it. It definitely still feels demonstrably turbocharged, just that momentary pause before you get into the real thump. So whilst response might have changed a bit, the character of the GT-R is still the same in terms of straight line performance. The other thing you can't help but notice is the new exhaust. It's still a titanium exhaust, but you get a few more, as you can hear, pops and crackles, particularly on the overrun. The rest of the soundtrack, the GT-R, curiously, for an old car, it's always sounded, I think, quite futuristic in a way because of the whines and the whistles and the chuffs. It's not a musical soundtrack as such, but it's very, very distinctive. Aerodynamically, the biggest change is the addition of new vents on the front arches, which Nissan claims increases front downforce by 7 kilos. Of more importance is the weight that has been saved. There are more carbon fibre body parts than ever, including a new roof, and overall this reduces mass by 10.5 kilos. Inside there are new Recaro seats that are stiffer but weigh 1.4 kilos less, although I'm afraid they're not available in the US. Perhaps most significantly, there are also new carbon ceramic brakes, which measure a massive 410mm in diameter at the front, but save over 16 kilos in unsprung mass. Now, I drove this Nismo without actually knowing any of the press information or what they'd done to it yesterday, and the big thing about the previous Nismo, the thing that sticks in my mind, is just the ride quality. It was so stiff. I don't think I've ever driven a stiffer road car. It's extraordinary. So when I got into this, yes, it still hunts cambers and moves over the bumps. It fidgets like a naughty schoolboy that's been told to sit still. But you notice the edges have just been rounded off very slightly. It's not quite so harsh. So why make all those efforts to save unsprung mass? Well, because it means they've been able to retune the dampers. So the Bilstein dampers are now 5% softer in compression, but a whopping 20% softer in rebound. And it just makes the car that much more habitable, enjoyable really as a road car. And I think it has to work better on the track as well. I'm sure it must do. We'll find out later. It's worth mentioning that encircling the new Rays forged alloy wheels are Dunlop tyres that have a fresh compound, an 11% greater contact patch thanks to fewer grooves, and a rounder shoulder shape. The result is a 5% increase in cornering force. Overall, the handling of the GT-R, well, it's the same as ever, that extraordinary blend of the car feeling heavy yet having incredible agility. It's almost like a sort of competition car, the way it darts into corners and feels incredibly nimble. Of course, feeling like a competition car on the road is one thing. But how will the Nismo stack up on a track? So here we are at the Lausitz Ring, not somewhere I have been before. It's a bit like, imagine a more glamorous is not the right word, but bigger, perhaps more impressive Rockingham. That's sort of what it is. So we're now on the banked oval, which is in fact a sort of tri-oval in a way, coming back onto the infield circuit here. And there are three things really that you notice in terms of difference on track between this and the previous generation Nismo GT-R, which handily, they had one off sitting in the pit lane, so I was able to go for a few laps in that as well to reacquaint myself with it. The first thing is that you might be able to see at the moment I'm not actually changing gear myself. I'm leaving the paddles well alone. And the new algorithm, I suppose, in the auto box, or dual clutch box, is incredibly good. In fact, I'm not sure I could do a better job. And you might think, wow, that's not very involving, is it? And it's not. Of course, I have done laps using the paddles, and I will in a minute. But I just thought I'd show you what it's like, because it's one of those things that if you're going, say, to a brand new track that you've never been to before and you're trying to learn it, well, actually, one less thing to think about can be quite useful. So a box with a really good intuitive auto mode, not a bad thing. The next thing that you notice on track, and it's the biggest difference probably, is the braking. It seems extraordinary really that Nissan hasn't fitted a set of carbon ceramic brakes to its GT-R before, because for such a big car you think, well, carbon ceramics just makes so much sense. But this is the first time, apart from one model that was only available in Japan. Very good. Overall stopping power, perhaps you don't notice quite the difference, but there's certainly less smell for a start. And whereas the old ones felt perhaps just a little bit over boosted near the top of the travel, these ones feel better right into the pedal, so you feel that you've got more control. The third thing is the front end. This car, this circuit rather, has a lot of these long corners where you're just constantly sort of really nudging up against limits for a long time, which is quite good, so you can feel how the car grips over a long period of time through a corner. And the adjustability of this in the corners just feels almost a bit like they fitted a wider front tyre to this in terms of the greater, just more instant adjustability in the car. But it does make quite a difference, because it makes the car feel more, just a bit more agile, a little bit more responsive, and therefore a little bit lighter as a result. Not that it ever feels anything other than a big car, this. Is the Nismo the best GT-R then? Well, for me the current track edition is still the sweet spot of the range. Yes, you do without the carbon stoppers, but I really don't think you notice the 30 brake horsepower deficit. More importantly, it has almost identical suspension settings to this new Nismo, and it will save you a huge amount of money. So the question I asked at the beginning of this film was, does the GT-R still make sense now that it's 12 years old? Well, in performance terms, others have definitely caught up. No longer is it perhaps quite the extraordinary standout performer that it once was. That's not to say it's not still chuffing quick, because it really is. But what's come to the fore more, and it was something that actually happened with the Aston Martin Vantage as well, is the character of the car, that old school character, the gritty character of this car, I think stands out even more now. Perhaps there's something to be, I think, really appreciated. No, it doesn't feel new anymore. In fact, even this latest tweaked Nismo has the familiarity of a favourite old anecdote. But the more old school mechanical elements of the GT-R, perhaps ironically, make it feel less digital than ever, and therefore more involving than many more modern offerings. If you want a GT-R, there's still nothing quite like it.